Thank you, my lovely supervisor, Professor Nealon. Thanks for facilitating. Much appreciated. Let's dive in. First demo. So how can we utilize legislation, so pull acts and regs for Australia and evaluate them en masse with large language models and RAGs to be able to discover experiments to run. So, I mean, I got to give you a little bit of information. Obviously, my types of experiments are always run on the institutional analysis and development framework. So, like any type of experiment, you'll have a workflow of some kind to go through. You might have triggers, actors, other things you add in. But what we're looking for are these things right here, the action arenas, the actors and the actual situations within the actual legislation. So we just download a copy and we're going to take that copy over to Notebook LM. And so I have different CPR resources. So what I'll do is I've already uploaded it to, where are we? The research one, CPR, here we go. So I've uploaded several documents here. Here is the ARC Act, and also there's some additional documents there. We'll go into it in a moment. But what's quite cool about this, of course, is our ability to, this is a RAG, obviously, and being able to use the AI behind it and then use the RAG to retrieve information against this information. So I've got some pre-queries here. So one of the first things you want to try to do is find key actors in the ARC. So I'll have fed it a prompt, and what it'll do is it'll go through. And what's nice is you can't see in this view, I'll show you again, but what basically it does is it's citing which resource it's from over here. So let's try to give it an example here. So one of the first things you have to do, so how are we going to find within the legislation these action arenas, right? And so these are the EEG experiments. You know, it's just like a game board. You got your actors, your chess pieces, and you got the things that arise from those pieces coming together. So, you know, chess pieces come together and then they have different rules around which they're allowed to participate in action situations. So that's what's really great about LLMs is, so we'll go to Google LM, Notebook LM, and what you'll see here is I will have a CPR for the research grants. And what I've done is I've loaded the Australian Research Councils Act. I've also loaded a set of rules. So I'm quite advantageous in my experimental discipline. We have, you know, a set of standard rules, a lot like you would in like chemistry or biology or something like that, where it defines, you know, how to do interventions or how to do treatment effects, things like that. And then I've also got some additional information on the ARC from them stating who and what they are in terms of community rules. So this is a really simple example, and obviously your literature review could really pack this out in terms of evidence against it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hop in here and you're going to start to look for the things you're looking for. And remember, I'm looking for actors in action situations. So because I've got this institutional grammar, the IAD grammar in there, which defines what those terms are, I can literally just go to the AI and say, please list any actors or action situations which may arise from the act. And there's obviously, you can get a lot more complicated, but I'm just trying to keep this really simple at this stage. So we're going to kind of build out this layer cake to understand why and how these are working, these LLM RAGs. And I must admit, you will spend a lot of time just sitting around waiting for, get yourself a fidget toy is what I'd recommend. So yeah, it'll come back and it'll start to give me this information. And I've actually kind of preempted one because I've iterated, right? Like you never do these things without iterating time and time again, and you utilize them and check them and write a unit test. So I've actually gone about and now defined, who are the actors. So all the actors inside the ARC, what rules they have, and now I can start to build out the marketplace where this CPR is being dealt with. So again, here's our entire marketplace, so to speak, our institutional marketplace. And we're looking for these situations. So that's kind of really the first step to be able to, and really you can, as you can see, if you look at, don't want to throw that away, but if you look at like what I've done, we've slowly started working through the acts and regs, and there's all kinds of Antarctica, which is coming up. There's emergency service workers, which is where I work. I work with the Country Fire Authority in Victoria. And so being able to share information amongst emergency services is really important. Building and construction, safety is a common property resource. So there's lots of these marketplaces which are defined by this experimental framework, which we can pick apart and then figure out how to actually calculate if the marketplace is a value effective or not. All right, so I do want to go a little bit into why this is valuable. So this framework that we're going through is by Elinor Ostrom here, Nobel Prize winner for very much this framework, and especially being able to do economic experimental games. I will point out as well, so this is the other thing I've loaded, so some actual money and value for the marketplace that is this common property resource. And you got to remember, research is a really good example of these types of experimental games because they share in common the same type of public goods. So common pool resources, and there's these different market types which Elinor Ostrom was able to identify as part of her Nobel Prize winning research. We're most used to private marketplaces, right? This is like Amazon, obviously buying donuts or personal computers. Obviously, you can have other marketplaces which are untold and club goods, public goods, which is very much, common shared, and then this specific marketplace, common pool resources, how we actually use common pool resources as good types to be able to calculate the value of that marketplace. And institutions matter, right? Like the most recent Nobel Prize winner in economics, it's all about institutions. Check it out. Okay, so in understanding our marketplaces, delete 5 seconds. So the nice thing about open data and government data, of course, is that we don't get bogged down by private and personal information, which I'll talk about later. But at the end of the day, we know the ARC is a common property resource market because it is spending money annually, and those funds are limited, right? They get split and divided. So that makes it significant. What's nice is we can actually factor in the community attributes. So the researchers and the ARC staff and the rules in use, right? So once we discover the experiment, we can actually then start to populate the experiment based on the different ARC missions, official documents, let alone policies at institutions about how they would work with ARCs. So you can really start to see that using these RAGs, you'll be able to build out all these documents. You add your University of Melbourne policy for ARC grants, and you add your partners policies, and obviously there's regulators and ethics and so forth and so on. So being able to load up all these documents and ask questions of them, and again, you can kind of turn off on and off which ones you want to ask questions of, which also makes it a very powerful tool. Okay, so as we gather the evidence in this RAG, this large language model RAG, it'll help us define how the game is played. So we're building out the construct. We're building out understanding the board game, right? Here's the board game you want to play on. And now we're also defining the pieces that can go on the board game, the Monopoly houses, and what rules are applied to those places, those games, so forth and so on. And we continue to just populate that out. So this pre-experimentation phase is a great way to just discover new things. Why not? Why not utilize that? And let's ask some questions.